All right, we're going to get started. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Matt Mahoney. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Sustainable Pittsburgh. And thank you all for joining us for our SCDN Policy Connection, exploring sustainable transportation options and opportunities. So everyone is aware this webinar will be recorded and all of the materials that are shared today will be presented or shared after the webinar, after today's program. We invite you to submit questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we'll answer those questions as we go. But feel free to answer those questions, and we'll get to them at the end or as we go. But for Sustainable Pittsburgh, who we are and what we're doing, Sustainable Pittsburgh, we're committed to building the knowledge and perspective and ability needed to create a better tomorrow for our region. We're optimistic, having worked with nearly 1,000 businesses, communities, and organizations to take action using our customized frameworks to track progress and simultaneously advance social equity, environmental stewardship, and prosperity. The strategic networks that we host leverage the collective expertise and diverse perspectives of our region to ensure our communities can meet our challenges today and strive into the future. And that's why we've asked you all here today to attend with our Sustainable Community Development Network to learn together so we can act together, because together is how we co-create a fundamentally equitable, resilient, healthy, and prosperous Southwestern Pennsylvania. We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors and express our appreciation to UPMC Health Plan for their support in making this program possible as a platinum sponsor. We'd also like to thank our silver sponsors, Pitt Ohio, Dollar Bank, and Xylem, as well as our bronze sponsors, partners, and supporting sponsors for helping to make these programs possible. Now, for today's agenda, what we have lined up for today, we'll start up with a quick overview of Sustainable Pittsburgh's programs and our carbon reduction sprints from Sustainable Pittsburgh Systems Administrator, Sawyer Seidlinger. Next, we'll help set the stage for today's discussion with a quick overview of what we mean when we're talking about sustainable transportation options and opportunities. And then we're happy to be joined by Julia Ferry, the Transportation Demand Management Coordinator for the Southwest Pennsylvania Commission, who will cover the concept of transportation demand management, as well as a variety of resources available to advance multimodal transportation options. Then we'll hear from Christine Yockel, Business Relationship Manager with Bike Pittsburgh, who will provide an overview of multimodal programs as well, available for businesses and other stakeholders, and the benefits that stakeholders can take advantage of immediately. And then we'll wrap up with Justine Russo, Director of Sustainability and Business Intelligence at Pitt, Ohio, who will speak about the innovative business approaches and sustainable transportation experiences that she's witnessed and how advancing sustainable transportation supports the bottom line, which will be a great place to start the Q&A and discussion. But in the meantime, please do ask those questions in the Q&A. Now, I'm happy to pass it over to Sawyer, who's going to talk more about our programs at Sustainable Pittsburgh and the Sustainable PA program partnership between Sustainable Pittsburgh and the Pennsylvania Municipal League and Sustainable Pittsburgh's second sprint challenge focused on carbon reduction. So, Sawyer, take it away.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you everybody for who's able to come and join us for this webinar. We have 4 different recognition programs that we support at Sustainable Pittsburgh and hold. Sustainable Pittsburgh Shop, our Sustainable Pittsburgh Restaurant, Workplace, and Sustainable Pennsylvania. And within those recognition programs, we have friendly yearly competitions that we call sprints. Our first one was the social equity sprint, and the one that we are running right now, actually, which it is not too late to join, you can join anytime, is our carbon emissions reduction sprint. These recognition programs offer a step-by-step process to track and measure sustainability progress, as well as a framework that organizations can use to drive measurable impact. The actions are based on market-selected practices and peer-reviewed by knowledge experts. Lastly, a benefit to the recognition programs is once recognized, you will be added to a list of our online directory, earn a digital badge and window cling, and we offer the 4 different recognition levels: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Sustainable Pennsylvania, in particular, covers a comprehensive set of sustainability topics and provides step-by-step guidance for how your community can advance performance in areas including waste, materials management, economic development, revitalization and energy, land use, and housing, as well as municipal operations and many more areas and issues. Sustainable Pennsylvania has many benefits. As you can see above, there is, it offers the ability to create a baseline for your municipality's current sustainability performance, as well as serve as an action plan for advancing your efforts. To help advance your progress, the program also offers resources, tools, best practices developed by over 60 advisors. Getting certified helps your community to be recognized as a leader in sustainability, and you'll receive a promotional kit, which includes a badge for inclusion on your website, job postings, or other uses, and a press release template. We'll also share your achievement all over our social media. Lastly, participation in this program can also help you resource your sustainable development initiatives and provide a platform for interested stakeholders to engage. Sustainable Pennsylvania also is recognized on the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development municipal funding applications, which could help a funding application stand out. So really important stuff to include and to be a part of for Sustainable Pennsylvania in particular. There are just 4 steps to getting certified. First, you'll need to create an account on the Sustainable Pennsylvania online program portal. That QR code that's featured on this slide will actually take you to the program's login page through Sustainable Pittsburgh, where you can start your certification or recognition program application. Next, you'll answer all the questions in the program. The program takes the form of an online assessment. The questions are customized for municipalities. You can work with a team of colleagues to complete this as well, which is also a great way to help organize a sustainability team within your municipality. Third, after you complete your assessment and submit it, our staff will provide feedback on your responses that you will have a chance to address before submitting your final answers. And lastly, you'll earn bronze, silver, gold, or platinum certification level based on 2 criteria: the total percentage of points you've earned and whether or not you've completed the actions that are required for each level. There is no deadline to participate, and certifications expire after 3 years. They're also for Sustainable Pennsylvania, it is a completely free certification program. As I mentioned earlier, right now we're actually running a sprint, the carbon emissions reduction sprint. It is 6 months long and will be ending in June. All of the actions within the sprint actually are a part of the larger designation or certification program. So whenever you're working through the sprint, you're actually working on the designation. Last year's sprint, which I mentioned earlier, was the social equity sprint. That sprint lasted for 3 months. And again, the carbon reduction is 6 months long. I also want to just note that if you follow up from the sprint to complete the designation, there is a fee to get designated for shops, restaurants, and workplaces. And the fee is dependent on the size and type of organization in which you're completing the recognition for. And just to reiterate, Sustainable Pennsylvania is always free for municipalities to complete the certification. And I just want to also note again that the QR code, you can go into our program's login page and start and create your account today. These are just our leaderboards that went up at beginning of January, we will be having our next round of leaderboard updates coming up here shortly. So for Sustainable Pittsburgh Workplace Program, we're seeing BNY Mellon as the top and the leader right now. As you can see, they have 62 points with a close second with Oxford Development. And lastly, Kurt J. Luskard Company with 41 points. And so there's still a lot of time left in this sprint and a lot of opportunity to get your answers in and improve your answers. If you're interested. And the information that we're learning today can help you to not only answer the questions in the transportation portion of the sprint, but also potentially improve your answers. Next is the leaderboard for Sustainable Pittsburgh Shops. We have the Life Potion LLC in first, Valensky's 4th Street Market, and Bike Share Pittsburgh with 37 points in third place. And we have Pittsburgh Taco Boys in first place right now for Sustainable Pittsburgh Restaurants, and Everyday Cafe in second place for Sustainable Pittsburgh Restaurants, as I mentioned. And last but certainly not least, Sustainable Pennsylvania. Right now we have McCandless Township with 95 points, Bellefonte Borough, and Ferguson Township. And as you'll notice here, Sustainable Pennsylvania reaches statewide, and so you get to see and compare your progress and points against county or municipalities across the state. Thank you so much, and now I'm going to pass it back to Matt to continue through our agenda.
Thanks so much, Sawyer. Great information, and encourage everyone to sign up if you haven't. That QR code, we'll have it again, and Sawyer, maybe you can put a link in the chat for folks that want to learn more and sign up about the sprint. So without further ado, let's hop right into the content of our for today's webinar, exploring sustainable transportation options and opportunities. So as many of us know, transportation issues impact many aspects of our neighborhoods and businesses, and from getting to work or school, shipping and receiving goods, fostering an attractive community or workplace. There are many benefits to advancing sustainable transportation systems, and just as many options to advance sustainable transportation regardless of your size, sector, or scope. Sustainable transportation systems improve air quality, advance climate resilience goals, drive equitable access to transportation choices. And regardless of where a community or an entity is on its path to a sustainable transportation future, there are many opportunities to advance sustainable transportation systems. So, what do we mean when we're talking about sustainable transportation? So sustainable transportation often refers to a transportation system's emissions, efficiency, and equity. First, sustainable transportation systems are low to zero emitting, meaning carbon emissions and other pollutants are removed significantly from the system, removing burdens imposed by greenhouse gas emissions and improving community health. Sustainable transportation also provides cost savings on fuels and vehicles and improves accessibility and reliability of affordable transportation options while enhancing the security and independence of the networks that connect us. Sustainable transportation systems are a necessity to enabling equitable mobility and allowing people to travel so they can have their basic needs met, exercise self-determination, and realize their full potential, regardless of race, age, orientation, disability, origin, or other status. When considering a transportation-related project, sustainable transportation projects ensure all users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, folks with disabilities, transit riders, if available, ride-sharing, and other modes, can be accommodated. An equitable transportation system also provides access for all that is affordable as to not disproportionately burden low-income communities while being safe for all users and avoiding harm to environmental justice and other marginalized communities. They're also efficient, using less energy to transport more people to achieve the same or better outcomes. Transportation efficiency is also highly dependent on the transportation infrastructure being used and the availability of technologies and how people use those technologies and systems. So with regard to infrastructure, there's been a lot of activity in the transportation sector over the past few years. and we've seen a lot of funding come through from the federal government. The transportation sector will receive billions in federal funding to reduce carbon emissions through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Programs like the Carbon Reduction Program will provide millions to Pennsylvania over the next 5 years for carbon reduction efforts such as beneficial electrification, rapid transit, and micromobility. Others, such as the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, have already awarded $98 million for projects in Pennsylvania to expand access to electric vehicle charging, and the next round is currently open. And they are currently soliciting and actively seeking out projects. So if you have a project and you're interested, reach out. As of earlier this last month, just look this information up. Pennsylvania has received $8.2 billion for roads, bridges, roadway safety, and other major projects. It's also received $105 million for an innovative program called Rebuilding America Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, which is funding to improve accessibility, mobility around schools in high injury corridors, implementing public transit modernization, redesigning bridges to accommodate multimodal travel, as well as ADA accommodations and traffic signaling. And these programs support sustainable transportation and are making critical investments across Pennsylvania's rural, urban, and historically underserved populations to improve lives and position the state for success. And these investments improve public safety and climate resilience, and there are opportunities to get involved and learn more. So if folks have a program that is on the very near or very close to kicking off, or you're looking for gap funding or other additional funding to fill in the gaps, the EPA's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which was authorized through the Inflation Reduction Act, has been active over the past few months. And this past summer, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Allentown, as well as the state of Pennsylvania received funding to design climate action plans to identify measures that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions in electricity generation, buildings, agriculture, natural and working lands, waste management, and of course, transportation. Within the priority climate action plan, those priority climate action plans are due March 1st, which is right around the corner, which in alignment with those implementation grants, or in alignment with the priority climate action plan, there is an implementation grant that is available for grants that align with the categories I mentioned previously. So if there are projects that are in alignment with reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation-related projects, there is this opportunity, the greenhouse or climate pollution reduction grant, implementation grant. So if anybody is interested, please reach out. We're happy to make the connection with folks in any of the regions across Pennsylvania or at the state level. Some examples: programs to increase the share of electric vehicles, transportation pricing programs that reduce vehicle miles traveled, incentive programs for the purchase of zero-emission programs, encouraging mode shift from private vehicles to walking, biking, and public transportation, etc. So these types of programs and initiatives can be funded through the Climate Pollution Reduction Implementation Grants. So before we kick off into our speakers, from a regional, multi-sector, equity-driven decarbonization strategy perspective, there's certainly a growing sense of urgency around decarbonizing multiple sectors of our economic ecosystems. And it's equally imperative to develop the necessary strategies, policies, and technologies to reduce emissions alongside consumption. And decarbonization is essential for our region. For anyone that's interested and wondering where to get started, transportation-based decarbonization strategies can begin with gathering information and data on existing transportation infrastructure, as well as modes and usage patterns to analyze emissions and other transportation-related challenges, set goals that are specific and measurable and based on best practices, and engage stakeholders over the long term. There are many tried and true innovative sustainable transportation solutions, and the speakers we've gathered for you today will share those insights with you all today. So to kick things off, we would like to start off with Julia Ferry, the Transportation Demand Management Coordinator at the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. In this role, she assists in the implementation of the Transportation Demand Management Action Plan, which manages data and communication for the Commute Info program and promotes TDM initiatives through engagement with the public and organizations in the 10-county SPC region. Prior to joining SPC, Julia obtained a bachelor's degree in urban studies and political science from the University of Pittsburgh and completed an internship at the City of Pittsburgh's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure, which sparked the passion and brought her here today. So without further ado, I'd like to kick it off to Julia.
All right, thank you, Matt, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Julia Ferry, and I'm the Transportation Demand Management Coordinator at the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. I'm very excited to be partnered with Sustainable Pittsburgh and very glad to be here today. So I recognize that some of you might not have heard of our organization before, so I just wanted to start by giving you a quick introduction. The Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission is the metropolitan planning organization focused on transportation and economic development for the 10 counties you see in this graphic on the slide. The big picture is that we direct state and federal funding allocated to our region, and we provide various services, programs, support, and resources throughout the community. We also create regional plans to establish a framework for municipalities, as well as identifying investment priorities. Our Transportation Demand Management Program focuses specifically on supporting policy, programs, and infrastructure that increase regional mobility options beyond driving alone, but we'll get more into what that encompasses in just a minute. Next slide, please. So Commute Info, which I've included the QR code for, may be the most prominent service of our TDM program. Commute Info essentially exists to help anyone commuting into or out of our 10-county region find alternatives to driving alone. So it doesn't matter if you're starting out in Steubenville, Ohio, or West Virginia. As long as you start or end somewhere within our region, we can help you get where you need to go. Commute Info services include multimodal trip planning, matching users to available carpools or van pools, and providing rewards that become available as you continue to track trips on your commute. For our van pool program specifically, SPC provides subsidies for vehicles rented through our partners at Commute with Enterprise, and those subsidies get dispersed monthly to our riders. Registered Commute Info members are also eligible for our emergency ride home program. So if something unexpected happens, like a family emergency or a meeting runs late, and you're not able to travel with your pool, you're guaranteed reimbursement for your ride home. On the employer side, we can provide communications materials and employee outreach, as well as data and technical assistance, which, again, I'll expand on later. And we've also got a friendly competition of our own, so keep an eye out for upcoming communications about our commuter challenge later this spring. And that's just another chance that we give our community to try alternative modes for their commute and earn some really great rewards. Next slide, please. So by this point, I've mentioned TDM a few times, but I want to take some time to dive a little deeper and understand what it actually is. Next slide. So the term Transportation Demand Management, or TDM, refers to strategies employed to improve mobility for all users and maximize travel choices beyond driving alone. So this includes carpooling, public transit, active modes like biking and walking, and even teleworking or hybrid work. While policy and governance are important factors in managing transportation demand, focusing on the decisions made by individual people and businesses creates the foundation for more effective demand management overall. So the first goal of TDM is to mitigate traffic congestion. This can be accomplished, like I said, by teleworking or by shifting travel to less congested times or routes, or using alternative modes that reduce the number of cars on the road. And then the next goal of TDM is improving system efficiency, and this includes actions that reduce travel time specifically for transit and high occupancy vehicles. It's also improvements to infrastructure and service for alternative modes, as well as increased connectivity between modes. And then finally, TDM seeks to enhance the overall quality of life by making all modes of transportation safer and more accessible, increasing access to jobs, and improving community health and environmental conditions. Next slide, please. So let's talk about TDM as a tool for carbon reduction. For a bit of context, data from the EPA showed that the transportation sector was the #1 contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in 2021 at 29%. Of these emissions from the transportation sector, light-duty vehicles, which are your typical cars and vans, made up the largest share at 58%. And while electrification is absolutely an important step in reducing transportation emissions, the truth is that we can't look to EVs to be the cure-all. In 2020, researchers from the University of Toronto concluded that in order to bridge the mitigation gap with EVs alone, the US would have to electrify over 350 million light-duty vehicles, which is 90% of the current fleet. And that would put a massive strain on our supply of electricity and other critical materials. So to maximize the effectiveness of vehicle electrification for carbon reduction, we need to supplement it with TDM strategies that encourage behavioral change and policy reform. It's also worth noting that TDM not only promotes carbon reduction within the transportation sector, but it also helps to mitigate other climate-related challenges ranging from water pollution to sustainable land use and facility design and operations. For example, existing buildings can earn up to 15 out of the 40 required points for LEED certification just by providing sustainable transportation options. And next slide, please. So obviously, TDM can't necessarily address what's coming out of the smokestacks at a manufacturing plant, but they can have a major impact on reducing Scope 3 emissions. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol identifies 3 different scopes of emissions, but this third scope, which often makes up the majority of an organization's total greenhouse gas emissions, encompasses the indirect emissions generated by sources not owned or controlled by the reporting organization. So this includes employees commuting to and from work, and business travel, things like that. The nature of Scope 3 emissions can make them difficult for an organization to manage, but employing TDM strategies is one way to make a sizable impact on them. Next slide, please. So now that we've discussed why TDM is important for carbon reduction, let's talk about how SPC can help you take action to implement TDM in a few different ways. Most of the actions that I'm going to cover do overlap with the Sprint program, but of course, these are things that anybody can get involved with at any time. So starting out with the municipal actions. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, connecting municipalities to funding is one of SPC's primary functions, but the resources and support we provide go beyond just that. So the first category I have on this slide here relates to green building policy and performance standards. TDM and sustainable transportation in general complement a number of green building certifications, including LEED and the Living Building Challenge. If your municipality wants to set performance standards for new or existing developments, SPC can set you on the right track with certifications that specifically complement sustainable transportation, as well as helping to identify TDM-related actions that you can take to earn credit towards these certifications. And then the next category we have is parking management, which eliminating parking minimums or creating parking maximums in zoning ordinances will have the greatest effect on encouraging more sustainable land use and transit-oriented development. But of course, this might not be feasible for every municipality. So that's why starting with complementary initiatives like demand-based pricing for parking, establishing parking benefit districts, where revenues from parking meters go directly back to the block that they're on, or conducting parking occupancy studies regularly can help in reducing congestion and incentivizing sustainable transportation. The SPC can support parking management efforts in a few different ways. Our talented data team is always working on models and analyses to help contextualize or justify your planning or project development. We can also provide technical assistance for creating policy or understanding best practices. And I also want to note that parking management is not limited to municipalities. Workplaces can provide financial incentives like cash outs for employees who don't use parking spaces, while businesses and business improvement districts can provide valuable buy-in for parking policy reform. And then we have policy and planning. And I think if I went over every single policy planning action for municipalities, we'd be here all day, but I'll try to give you the highlights. So our TDM Strategic Action Plan is a great framework for municipalities looking to incorporate TDM into their policy and planning. We can help you identify strategies that work best for your municipality or strengthen your existing efforts. Beyond that, as I mentioned before, our data team maintains an extensive collection of GIS maps and other data to assist in developing policy and programs. I've also listed bike policy and infrastructure, and I'm sure Christine with Bike Pittsburgh is going to cover plenty of information on that. But as part of our active transportation plan, we've got active transportation profiles with great insights for all of our 10 counties and the city of Pittsburgh. And you can also get in touch with us about how to apply for the League of American Bicyclists bicycle-friendly community designation. When it comes to transit and multimodal connectivity, we're able to provide data and assistance for transit access studies or for first and last mile solutions. We also regularly engage planners, policymakers, advocacy organizations, and local businesses, and really anyone else interested in keeping up with TDM through our newsletter and our quarterly TDM Partners Forum meetings. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in for now or for the future, of course, feel free to get in touch with me and I can get you on those lists. And then the last category I have on this slide is EV policy and infrastructure. Deploying EV infrastructure alongside comprehensive policy efforts can make a huge difference in reducing emissions. So whether you're looking to electrify your municipal fleet or expand charging infrastructure, we can get you connected with the data, technical assistance, and funding opportunities you might need. Next slide, please. So this slide covers a few ways for workplaces and businesses to implement TDM. If you've already begun participating in the sprint, you may have noticed that there are a few questions specifically referencing our commute info program. You can earn points for the sprint just by having employees register for an account at commuteinfo.org. We're also always happy to meet to provide communication materials, give an in-person introduction, or provide a commuter heat map to help you form sustainable commute groups. Once your employees are registered, we can share data on program utilization and various metrics of environmental impact for your organization's sustainable commutes. Lastly, pledging to participate in our annual commuter challenge will also earn you points for the sprint. And then another way to earn sprint points and implement TDM is to offer transportation benefits to your employees. Commuter choice benefits refer to pre-tax payroll deductions for things like transit passes or van pooling costs. And I think an action that we'd love to see more employers take is directly subsidizing the cost of transit passes, bike share memberships, or van pool costs. Also providing nominal daily cash outs to employees who make sustainable commute choices, like opting to bike to work or not using a parking space. Just for a couple examples, is a great strategy. The Federal Highway Administration points to these types of daily cash outs and financial incentives as one of the most useful and cost-effective transportation benefits workplaces can provide. You can also earn points in the sprint through sustainable transportation infrastructure at your workplace. So this includes making showers, changing facilities, and bicycle repair equipment available to your active commuters, as well as providing secure and weatherproof bike storage, installing safety features for pedestrians and bicyclists like cameras or better lighting. And I've also added reserving parking spots that are more valuable, whether it be because of the proximity or security or whatever else, for those that commute using car or van pools as a low-cost way to incentivize sustainable commuting. And then I already touched on this in the previous slide, but again, we are happy to assist businesses with obtaining transportation-related credits for LEED certification. So to kind of close us out, TDM encompasses a huge range of actions, and the ones that I mentioned are just some of them. But there are ways for you to implement TDM from whatever level you're starting at and help in shifting our region towards a more sustainable transportation future. So thank you all for your attention, and thanks to Sustainable Pittsburgh for partnering with us and inviting me to talk with you all.
Thanks so much, Julia. We do have a few quick questions if you have a second. It sounds like TDM can be used to encourage community development. Is that an accurate depiction or explanation of what TDM can be used for?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. And then I'm not familiar with this one, but Active Score, are you familiar with Active Score? Can Active Score certification benefit businesses on a more local basis with regards to reducing vehicle usage?
I haven't heard of that, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure, but it sounds like it might.
Yeah, for anybody else that's out there, I encourage anybody that's taking a look at a certification program, having background and researching the area, to do your due diligence in evaluating the legitimacy, the credibility of those certification programs. Sustainable Pittsburgh's worked with the hundreds of stakeholders in putting together our certification programs, and there are multiple layers to ensuring its efficacy. So just be sure to read up. But and then just also a reminder, the recording of this session will be shared for everybody. So lots of great information from Julia. I don't see any other questions, but we'll likely have some near the end. But moving along with our program, I'd like to introduce Christine Yockel from Bike Pittsburgh. Christine is the business and sponsors manager for Bike Pittsburgh, a 501c nonprofit advocating for safer streets and better connected communities in Pittsburgh. When she's not rolling around town sharing the fantastic sponsorship opportunities available at Bike Pittsburgh's wildly popular community events or consulting on how businesses can be more bike friendly, she's chasing her two kids around the house and the neighborhood. As am I, Christine, as am I. And I will pass it along to you.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. Aren't we all? I mean, those kids are fast. I am here to talk to you about creating a more multimodal business. And so active transportation is good for employees, it's good for customers, it's good for partners, and it's good for the bottom line. Essentially, we're going to be talking about choices today and how we can make choices easier for people. Next slide. I do work for Bike Pittsburgh, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization here in Pittsburgh. Our mission is that we're transforming our streets to make biking and walking commonplace for all Pittsburghers in order to improve our quality of life and reduce the harmful effects of car dependence in our communities. So we're a nonprofit bicycle and pedestrian advocacy organization here in Pittsburgh. All of our employees live here in Pittsburgh. We understand Pittsburgh. A lot of us grew up here, and we're working to make Pittsburgh safer. So how you're getting around is that a person has in reducing their carbon footprint on a day-to-day basis. And we believe that people will be more likely to make those choices when they are safe and easy and realistic to make. Next slide. We approach our mission through three different pillars. We have advocacy, community, and education. Advocacy is the work that we do working with the city, pushing for better biking and walking infrastructure and policy. We do that with meetings with people at the city. We do that through some of our initiatives that we have, some of our petitions that we have, and through working with the various neighborhood and bike and pedestrian committees that are throughout the city. If you don't know if you have a bike and pedestrian committee at your city, you can find out on our website. If you're curious about that, they are groups of people who live in the community who want to make the community safer. They'll do things like working on a campaign to get a better stop sign, to improve the crosswalk visibility, to create a bike lane, to implement some sort of traffic calming measure that will make it easier for people in their neighborhood to get around. We also have community events throughout the city. Maybe you've heard of Open Streets, that's us. We do Pedal Pittsburgh. We have the Women and Non-Binary Bike Summit and group rides. And we have Bike to Work Day coming up on May 9th, so get ready for that. And then we have education initiatives, so confidence city cycling classes to make people feel a little bit more comfortable getting around on a bike. Operation Illumination, we've passed out 500 sets of lights to people every year for the past 2 years. Just roll up with your bike, don't have lights, we can give them to you. This reduces barriers and makes it safer for people to be seen while they're riding around at night. We also host Know Your Bike classes where you can learn a little bit more about easy bike maintenance at home. And we are working with the school or the city's Safe Routes to School program to try and make connections to schools safer and easier. Next slide. So why you should already have multimodality on your radar. Multimodality is essentially not new. Unless you are walking or using a wheelchair to get around exclusively, you are a multimodal person. It just simply means that you're using multiple modes to get around. So if you are driving a car, you're not going to drive that car right up to the third floor of your building. You're going to park it somewhere, you're going to get out, you're going to walk. If you are riding the bus, you're not going to have that front door service most of the time with your bus stop. You're going to ride the bus and then either get off and walk or ride to the rest of your destination. So a lot of people would be used to this as being called like a hybrid commute. And it can make things a lot easier. It increases the connectivity a lot when you think about getting around using multiple modes of transportation. So 20 to 25% of Pittsburgh households, not individuals, but Pittsburgh households, do not have access to a personal vehicle. So that's 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of every Pittsburghers are getting around using a bus, using walking, using a bike. And that's just how they're getting to and from where they need to go. Biking and walking are economical, environmentally friendly, and fun ways of getting around. And I do want to stress that everybody is a pedestrian at some point in time in their journey. Just as I just said, you're getting out of that vehicle or getting off of that bike and you are walking to the end of your destination, or you're using a wheelchair to the end of your destination. Bike parking space is cheaper and requires less maintenance than a surface lot or a garage. More bike parking can decrease a parking minimum requirement by 1-to-1 for up to 30% if you're building a new facility. That is ingrained in the code. And we could get into land use issues and environmental impact of asphalt, but I'm not going to get into that technical part right now today. But yeah, all of that impacts how we see and navigate our world. Healthier, happier employees and more productivity. That is something that is a benefit of using a bike or walking or using any other form of active transportation. So a 2019 Australian study found that morning exercise for 30 minutes improved cognitive function throughout the day. And the University of Edinburgh just released findings from a 5-year study that linked bike commuting to greater reduction in antidepressant use over a 5-year period. So the 2022 ACS survey showed that about 1.2% of Pittsburghers primarily bike to work, which is double the national average. Around 10% walk. That's one of the highest walking averages in the country. And 13% of those people use public transportation. Those are all of the people's primary ways of getting around. So the 2019 Make My Trip Count survey showed 15% living within city limits use a bike for transportation, and 10% of people from Pittsburgh and surrounding boroughs. About 40% of car trips nationally are fewer than 2 miles. And for some perspective, it takes about 15 minutes to bike from Lawrenceville to downtown, and that distance is 3 miles and it's relatively flat. I would bet that you cannot get from Lawrenceville to downtown or vice versa without driving at least 20 minutes and then taking the time to find some parking, get out of the car, figure out where you are, and orient your space. So it can be faster depending on where you're going. Next slide. Some structural improvements you can make to your office to make it easier. Indoor bike parking is one of them. Having some sort of sheltered or indoor bike parking is recommended whenever people will be parking their bike for more than 2 hours. It should be easily accessible on a street level floor or include elevator access with a room for a bike inside the elevator. So having somewhere to put your bike before walking up a flight of stairs is essentially what that's saying. Should be accessible to all strength and ability levels for riders. So these wall-mounted bike parking options that exist have at least a handful of ground level horizontal ones. This helps accommodate some of the some of the adaptive bikes that people are using to get to and from where they're going, some of the cargo bikes that people are using to get to and from where they're going, and some of these very heavy e-bikes, which can be upwards of 60 pounds. It's easier to just like park that thing and leave it at ground level without having to pick it up. Bike racks should be within 100 feet of a front entrance. That just means that when you get to the front entrance, if you can see where you can store your bike by looking around, that's going to be helpful for people. Having showers or lockers, somewhere to safely store a change of clothes if there's not room at their desk. Any way you can make it easier for people to be their freshest while they're at work will reduce their hesitation about biking to work. Having some of these structural improvements do lead to LEED improvements with your building. They lead to different types of certification programs, such as Sustainable Pittsburgh's, and the League of American Bicyclists, Bicycle Friendly Business and Bicycle Friendly Community designations. Those are both something that you can get by going through a checklist and seeing what you can do to change or maintain or improve your scores. And I would actually, if you're just looking at how to be more bike friendly, even if you don't choose to ultimately get that certification, they're a good place to start looking for ways that you can make yourself and your business more bike friendly. Next slide. Making flexibility and adaptability part of our office culture is a way that you can be more bike friendly, more walking friendly, more parent friendly. So having something like a flexible start and finish time to account for weather, bus delays, or wanting to avoid walking or riding during peak rush hour. So it can alleviate a lot of stress with someone if they're not going at the same time as everyone else. It helps parents who have to walk their kids to school, to have, or people who have like a neurodivergent work pattern that allows them to have their peak productivity hours outside of the 9 to 5 blocks. Encouraging and permitting employees to work from home on days where there is extreme weather. This is just something that we've gotten used to, I think, with COVID. And if we can, continue to improve the flexibility and improve people's abilities to be a little bit more, relaxed with the rigid 9 to 5 must be in office, must be here, must be visible. I think we've seen that people are happier and they're more willing to stick around. Incentivizing public traffic in addition to public transportation in addition to biking. This helps on days where it is Pittsburgh and it is all the seasons in one day. You leave and it's like this outside, and then it's raining by 2 o'clock. And, it's a lot easier to know that you have that ability to, take the bus home, or something happens with your kid. You can, use the bus to get back to where you need to be a little bit faster sometimes. So, some of us have on our web pages, how to get here, or on event pages, how to get here. A lot of those include parking, parking specifications, where your parking lot is, what to expect. I would encourage all of you to take a look at your website and potentially include, instructions on how to get there by walking, instructions on how to get there by biking, because there are safer routes that are not necessarily the way that you would drive there, and include transit directions, what bus stops are nearby, what is going to make it easier for people to find your office. Having a shared bike fleet at an office is like a cool, fun way to do this. You can have, encourage folks to use them as exercise, or use them during their lunch hour to get exercise, or to get to, an office meeting a little bit faster. And then, of course, we have Pogo, the lovely bike share here in Pittsburgh, and they have, group fleet options, and there are Pogo stations around town. If you go to the next slide, we can learn a little bit more about them. So just to make sure that they're seen, they are a nonprofit as well. They are the bike share here in Pittsburgh, and a bike share is just, they have fleets of bikes around the city. If you download the PBSC app, or if you download the transit app, you can see which stations are nearby to your office. They do have corporate memberships with a $500 initial setup fee, and then from there it's $95 per employee per year. And that, gets them, a half-hour trip for free every single day that they need to ride anywhere. It also gets you a fun little group ride and a lunch and learn group workshop for your office, which is a fun way to get employees out and, creating an experience that they will share together. Next slide. City of Pittsburgh actually just got Pogo memberships for everyone who works with the City of Pittsburgh, which is pretty cool. Employee encouragement opportunities. I know that we spoke a little bit about that with Julia, but there's so many, just be creative about this. There's so many opportunities that you can do to encourage employees, customers, whoever you're engaging with on a regular basis to walk or bike to your shop, your restaurant, your office. Resource caravans. So it says physical activity accrues next day, work relevant resources. This is a Harvard Business Review study. They found that daily physical activity generated a package of next day resources which they called resource caravans that contributed to work related outcomes. So increased physical activity leads to better quality of sleep, which leads to increased vigor the next day, which also leads to better concentration and task focus. Wellness activities and group rides are a way that you can incentivize your employees to bike to work. Bike trains by neighborhood. So in addition to like carpools or caravans, you can let employees know that they live in a similar neighborhood to each other, and they can, create a coffee shop that on Fridays, they meet at that coffee shop and then bike to work together. A free bus pass in lieu of a free parking space, make people make choices that open up the choices that they can make down the line. Coffee and muffins for those who bike to walk on Fridays, just make it a fun little gathering, make it a positive experience, make it something that they want to be a part of. Pedal Pittsburgh has office team abilities. Pedal Pittsburgh is our largest fundraiser. It happens the last Sunday in August, and it's a really fun day. And if you want to have a group of people, create like a group workout, like leading up to a Pedal Pittsburgh, team that they could do that day. That's a really great way to get people together, get them talking, get them, commuting together outside of work. Again, already mentioned pogo passes, shared bikes at work. We already talked about those. Financial incentives. Julia started to dip into this, and again, like creating something that like you bike to work 10 days this month, you get $50 or whatever. Something that would positively reinforce the feeling of biking. And I mean, if you think about it, the way that we, if you do have like a gas offset initiative, where you're paying for your employees to drive to the location and offsetting the cost of gas, this financial incentive could offset the cost of a tube repair. It could offset the cost of, all of the other bike maintenance issues that they would need to do if that is their primary mode of transportation. Do challenges, so make it fun. Have a leaderboard, bike to work every Friday. Get a sticker for, doing all 4 of them. Bike to work during Bike Month, which is May. We will host commuter cafes on May 9th for anyone who bikes and walks to work. If you want to have your employees incentivized to try it at least that first time, think about May 9th. They get to the office and then you can all ride together. Or anyone who didn't ride that day, or it's hard for them to ride to work that day, they could take a pogo and do a bike train down to one of the commuter cafes. We'll give you free coffee. It's a fun time. And yeah, it's just about being outside and enjoying the city that we live in. If you're a retail space with customers, this could be helpful for your employees. There's more parking near your business if your employees are not taking up all that room in front of the business. A lot of people are like, oh, I never go there. I don't really like, I can never find parking. It's such a chore. Well, remove some of the obstacle of finding parking. You could also incentivize customers. So something like it's always happy hour when you bike or walk here, $1 off, 10% off, any kind of thing that you can do. Yes.
Oh, I was just we're getting close to
Time check. Yes.
for the
Okay.
next presentation. Just want to make sure we leave enough time.
Yes, absolutely. All right, next slide. How can Bike Pittsburgh help you? Reach out to me. Send me an email. My email is christine@bikepgh.org. I'm happy to help you come up with something that you can do yourself, that you can implement yourself. Sponsorship and volunteer opportunities are always available. We do have a series of events that will get you some exposure and get you some positive brand alignment for being a fun and healthy, active workplace. And again, like I'm happy to come out and help you figure out bike parking. I'm happy to brainstorm some ideas that will help you, work for your office. We're available to host lunch and learns. We can host bike rides in conjunction with Pogo. And we have the Pittsburgh Bike Map that is available to folks for free. It's a really easy way to let people know how they're getting around and what they can expect on their journey and their commute time. Next slide. And yeah, thanks for listening. Please feel free to, send me an email if you have any specific questions. Let me know if there's anything I can do, if I can answer any questions about biking, about walking, about, how we can all get around a little bit more connected. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Christine. And just so everybody is aware, we are scheduled to run until 1:15. So Christine, don't feel bad if you feel like you took a lot of time, a lot of really good information. That's one piece of feedback that we've already received. Lots of really good information. So thank you very much, Christine. So without further ado, I have said that numerous times today, I recognize, but it seems appropriate. So our next speaker, Justine Rousseau, the Director of Sustainability and Business Intelligence for Pitt, Ohio. Justine is on the front line of Pitt, Ohio's award-winning sustainability programs, and her responsibilities include heading the cross-functional steering committee, implementing the company's carbon calculator, and reporting on actionable sustainability metrics. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Justine had served on Sustainable Pittsburgh's board of directors from 2017 to 2022 and was board president during her tenure. So we're very excited to host Justine in this capacity here. So let's move right on to Justine.
Well, thank you for that nice introduction and for the opportunity, as well as all the great content already. I really appreciated hearing Julia and Christine's info. So a little bit about Pitt, Ohio. If you don't know, can I do the slides or are you doing them, Matt?
Oh, I will be doing this, so just let me know.
Next slide, please. Sorry. A little bit about Pitt, Ohio. We are a freight transportation company focusing on less than truckload, or LTL, if you're familiar with that. We operate in the Mid-Atlantic region, and we have sister companies in the Midwest as well as New England. We also have partnerships that can ship anything in the United States or Canada. Currently working on Mexico as well. Next slide, please, Matt. We also can operate in many different services across the supply chain. Basically whatever a customer would need, we have the ability to help them. And just, I realize being the community network, I just want to emphasize here, while people on the call might not necessarily be in logistics, we all are receiving packages. Freight really drives the economy. So I think this aspect of moving goods across the world is a critical part of the decarbonization issue or problem that's in front of us. So next slide, please. So we, as many others, we focus on the triple bottom line: people, planet, and purpose. Truly, I'm going to talk a lot about our planet initiatives, but the things that we do for decarbonization also really need to elevate our people and our purpose. And next slide, please. Just talking a little bit about people. Really are proud. We have a highly engaged workforce. We do an engagement survey every 2 years. We get scores in the high 70s, similar to technology companies, which is a little special for a blue collar company, really focusing on compensation and benefits, as well as physical and financial wellness. And we really feel that those items and having a highly engaged workforce truly lead to a better customer experience, which hopefully means more customer loyalty and more shipments. And more shipments will mean more density on routes, which hopefully means that we are more efficient and really leveraging that diesel fuel where we can. Next slide, please. So I'll talk a little bit, take more time to talk about our decarbonization strategies that we have outlined here. You know, when we think about SmartWay, if you're not familiar with EPA SmartWay program for freight carriers, we truly appreciate the leadership that the EPA has brought through SmartWay, but reporting to SmartWay, the way we see it, is pretty much the least a carrier can do. A lot of people say, well, are you a SmartWay carrier? Yes, that doesn't necessarily outline specifically what you're doing to become more sustainable. So where we started was with our carbon footprint. 90% of our emissions come from our truck. That's probably obvious, for a trucking company. But what really helps with the monthly carbon and energy audit is it really shows us where our initiatives are having an impact on our overall carbon footprint. For example, because so much of our carbon comes from the trucks, we use about 40,000 gallons of diesel a day. So improving miles per gallon, even a little bit, has a tremendous savings. So training our drivers and engaging our drivers on the basics of shifting, stopping, and idling, and having them see their metrics and understand them has a real impact. And in the past year alone, just focusing on vehicle preventative maintenance, tire inflation, and weekly miles per gallon reports have improved our miles per gallon over 7%, and that we're estimating a reduction of fuel usage of about 200,000 gallons. Over swinging around to about 7 o'clock on the clock here, at the LEED certified buildings. Now, again, 90% of our carbon is coming from the trucks, but what we have found is investing in our facilities is not only good for our carbon footprint, but it also makes us the employer of choice. It makes a really positive environment for our employees. So next slide, please, Matt. Start with a picture of our Pittsburgh terminal. So this facility opened back in 2015. Many of our facilities, before we even had the word sustainability in our organization, used things like low flow urinals and LED lighting, all the things that you would do to try to run the building as efficiently as possible. What LEED certification brought us was a whole new set of technologies, such as electric forklifts, geothermal heating and cooling, the detention ponds and bioswales for our stormwater, and really looking at locally sourced and recycled material content for the building materials, the furniture, and the fixtures. Next slide, Matt. Thank you. So this is our Cleveland facility, which opened in 2020. And I didn't highlight it, but these two facilities are of our three that have renewable energy. So in this case, you can see the solar panels on the roof. It's highlighted right in the middle, as well as this facility. The Cleveland facility has 8 wind-stacked wind turbines. The Pittsburgh facility has 2 wind-stacked wind turbines. And what we did was we leveraged microgrid battery storage to actually bring in solar and wind into one bus. And we did not invent that. We collaborated with the University of Pittsburgh, Swanson School of Engineering, as well as with WindStacks to create this now patented process for storing renewable energy and being able to use it in a DC power microgrid. In Pittsburgh, our microgrid is about 70 kilowatts of storage. It powers about a third of the facility, including all of the dock, the electric forklifts, the LED lights. The Cleveland facility, we really scaled up, and this terminal, the microgrid has storage of 1 megawatt. And what's really exciting about the Cleveland facility, next slide, please, Matt. This is the renewable energy microgrid. Sorry, one more slide. This is where we've started our fleet electrification projects. So this facility has 2 Volvo VNR straight trucks. That's the one in the upper left corner. And then you can see the charging station. That's one of 2 75 kilowatt fast chargers. Bottom left is an electric forklift. And then we also have these, we have 2 of these Ford e-Transit vehicles. And hopefully before the end of February, we'll have 2 Freightliner EMCs in Cleveland. And we'll also be adding fleet electrification to our Harrisburg facility, starting the project hopefully in 2024 and actually being able to use the trucks in 2025. Just to give you some stats on the Volvos in the upper left corner, they have a payload of about 8,000 miles and a range of about 150 miles. The Freightliner EM2s are expected to have a payload of about 11,000 pounds and a range of 200 miles. And we're really trying to expand that electrification where we can. I think some caveats, you know, as you're thinking about freight transportation, the technology is both rapidly changing and expensive. An electric straight truck costs twice as much as a diesel straight truck right now. The costs are starting to come down, but then you still have the issue of infrastructure. Can you get the power needed to not only charge one truck, but multiple trucks, and how long will it take? Next slide, please, Matt. Thanks. So I also wanted to make a little bit of a turn here and talk about Scope 3 emissions. If you haven't heard of what's going on in the news, so the EU has new requirements. California has passed their own requirements for companies to report on emissions, and the Securities and Exchange Commission is also coming out, whether it's going to be this year or next year. It looks like it's coming down the pike for requiring publicly traded companies to report on climate and emissions. So it's really becoming a hot topic, and we understand that the emissions from our trucks are the Scope 3 emissions for our customers. We have worked on a carbon report. We've had this out for about 10 years now, and we're really proud that you can get that information if you're a customer of ours via EDI, API. We can send it to you in Excel. We can schedule it just to go to you. We also report via EcoVadis and the Carbon Disclosure Project. So if you subscribe to those services, you can receive Pitt, Ohio's data. And we're really working on tools to further this, to help our customers understand their carbon footprint and to make decisions that will help decarbonize their Scope 3 emissions. And then my last slide, promise, is just from a shipper, from a freight point of view, if you are in that position as a business, there are some things that you can do to help reduce carbon emissions. The first one is, if you have a transportation management system, use it strategically. A lot of the benefits of it is to use it tactically and pick the lowest cost carrier. But what happens is that drives multiple carriers to your facility for pickup. And if you can reduce the number of carriers, then you're reducing the number of trips into your facility. Reducing dwell time, not only, we measure idling on our drivers, so we make sure that we're not wasting those emissions, but also the less time we have to spend at each stop, again, the more freight we can put on a truck and make that route more efficient. We're always going to talk about reducing air. We want freight to move safely and securely, but we also want to make sure, we're getting as much freight on the truck as possible. And shipping air is just, I think there are some improvements that we can make in that area. And then finally, working with customers. I always bring up, especially as I'm talking to people not in the industry, that Amazon effect. It's great that you can get that next day delivery, but if you can aggregate, your purchases as a company, then you're getting fewer deliveries, and that means less trips for your carrier. And with that, I think that was it. Thank you so much for your time, and looking forward to the questions.
Thanks so much, Justine, and thank you all for participating and for the good conversation. Lots of good content that was discussed. If we could have I guess our speakers come back onto the screen. We don't have any questions in the Q&A, so to speak, right now. But as I listened to each of your conversations, I heard, certification programs pop up a few times and wondered, as you're evaluating opportunities and making recommendations to folks in the community about how to advance sustainable transportation options, how effective or useful have those certification programs been in helping to communicate what the benefits of sustainable transportation options are?
I can speak to when I'm completing those certifications, the great thing is that instead of seeing it as a negative, if you can't answer something, I think it really starts to create an action plan for your organization. So again, when we were looking at LEED certification, these were technologies we had never used before. We had really had to wrap our brains around how do you add electric forklifts when we were used to propane forklifts. And I tell this story quite a bit. I remember our operations team was very concerned about the chargers and how much room they would take up, but they've been such a benefit to our employees because there's less odor, there's less debris on the there's like a black film that comes off of the tires, but the electric forklifts don't have that, and it's just such a nicer work environment that we wind up having it at our non-LEED certified terminals. So yeah, we really look at these certifications and challenges as an opportunity to test what are the best practices out there.
Nice. And that's what it sounds like, is that it's a good repository for all of the ideas, all of the different concepts that you can come up with. And it helps to push the conversation a little bit. Christine, I would pose the same question to you. How do you sort of push businesses, or not push, but encourage folks to take that first step? It seems like that first step is always the hardest to take. What is your trick for getting businesses to take that first step in taking some sort of action, just either evaluating or making a plan to make a plan, whatever it may be? What would your recommendation be?
Well, I don't want to trick anyone. I want to make sure that they know that this is something that's going to benefit them. It's going to benefit their employees. It's going to benefit, like just the way that everyone's getting around in general. A lot of times, I think when I get a business emailing me, it's because they had a question from someone who, a new hire. They had someone come in from like another office in another city. And at that office in that city, they had X, Y, and Z programming. And like, how can we do that here? And like, what are resources? I have a lot of businesses reach out to me about getting the Pittsburgh bike map because they love to hand it out to their new employees who are getting familiar with the city in general. It's a good resource, even if you're, not biking. And it gives you an idea of like how connected our city is, because it's not a big city. We live like footprint wise, we live in a pretty small, tight, dense city. And it is approachable once you've done it. I mean, Open Streets is a giant activation of like what we would love to see, a people-centered city. And I like to tell the story that, my first Open Streets before I even worked with Bike Pittsburgh, we parked at 2nd Avenue, got to downtown, and then went to Lawrenceville, and then, oh no, there's an entire hour left of this event. We'd better hurry back. And it took 15 minutes for me to get back. It was nothing. And, when you learn how connected and how close everything is, the world really opens up.
Yeah, that's true. Big, small city here in Pittsburgh, but lots of those communities all across Pennsylvania as well. I do see a question for Julie. I wasn't sure if you had information on transportation-related carbon heat maps for the region. Now, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know that the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant program and that effort is underway. I'm not sure if heat heat maps will be included as part of that analysis. But is that something that you might be looking to create, or is that something that that you already have at in your resource guides?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of one, but I'm sure that that is, you know, I can actually drop the link to the repository of GIS maps. But I'm sure that's something that we would be interested in creating. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure with the climate pollution reduction grants program, that will likely culminate in some map or some identification of where carbon sources are and how transportation related carbon impacts. So now that we're past time, I appreciate everybody's attention and attendance. Thank you so much for participating. Again, a reminder for those that are interested in getting engaged and taking action today, take a look at our carbon reduction sprint. The link is in the chat, or reach out to myself or Kelly Henderson, our Director of Programs. But with that, I thank you all for joining us today for this conversation with the Sustainable Community Development Network, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.